Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our impromptu reading of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I originally read the first chapter of this book out loud in honor of Randy Ray, the Literate Texan's Lone Star Book Club. This is his pick for the month. Mainly to ask the question about how far we could get inside the mind of a Victorian reader reading this for the first time. A mighty task, considering the huge cultural impact this book has had. But you all liked it, and you all kept asking for more. So we are now reading Dracula, and we are up to chapter 6. Now, some of the chapters in this book are going to be a little odd with me reading them out loud, because some of them I have read out loud on BookTube before. I participated in a read aloud of Dracula years ago with Mark at Book Time with Elvis and Micah Cummins. And so some of the chapters fell to me. But we're gonna read them all afresh, and we have left the thrill and the horror and the excitement of Jonathan Harker trapped inside Castle Dracula, and we have come to letters between random people, journal entries of random people, random stuff. That last chapter was random stuff, and Bram Stoker is a very dramatic, very good writer, a very involving writer. So you weren't really complaining, but that chapter pretty much destroyed any narrative momentum that it had going in. So you're wondering, if you're reading this for the first time, with chapter 6, where we are today, you're wondering, well, okay, you were showing us a centuries-old Transylvanian count lying insensate like a blood-soaked leech on top of a pile of earth inside a box, glaring hatefully at the outside world. You were showing us that, and now you've moved on to this, and you've got to start upping the creep factor eventually, or that momentum is not going to be enough to carry us. What on earth did those first 4 chapters have to do with anything? Well, we have met a whole bunch of our characters, including Mina, who is Jonathan Harker's intended, whose name came up many times in the first 4 chapters. And we have met her friend Lucy, and we have met the 3 young gentlemen who are all involved with these 2 women to one degree or another. There's Mina's intended, Jonathan Harker. There's Lucy's intended, but then there are the 2 other men, his best friends, who would also like to marry Lucy, and she'd like to marry all 3 of them. And we're sort of following their daily activities. Lucy has politely but firmly, and with kissing and hand-holding, turned down 2 of her suitors and accepted the 3rd. But nothing creepy happened. Nothing creepy even was intimated, except that one of her suitors runs an insane asylum. And one of the patients in the insane asylum is a man named Renfield, who is strange. He seems strange. But that's it. That's all. So we are now moving on to chapter 6, which once again is going to be a mishmash of all sorts of contemporaneous accounts. There's no then this happened, then that happened. There's very little of that in the true sense of the past tense. These are all things that are more or less happening contemporaneous with events. Journal entries, diary entries, letters, phonograph recordings, and whatnot. So we're going to see, and you're going to see, that Bram Stoker knows perfectly well his stagecraft. He knows perfectly well how long he can trespass on his reader's attention without increasing the creep factor. And he decides 1 chapter is about all he can get away with. So in chapter 6, we get a tiny, tiny uptick. I think it's marvelously well done, but then again, I don't know how many times I've read this book. I am a huge fan. So this chapter 6 starts off on the 24th of July, and it's Mina's journal. Jonathan Harker's intended, Mina is keeping a journal, and she is at Whitby. She has gone to the seaside. Lucy met me at the station, looking sweeter and lovelier than ever, and we drove up to the house at the Crescent, in which they have rooms. This is a lovely place. The little river, the Esk, runs through the deep valley, which broadens out as it comes near the harbor. A great viaduct runs across, with a high piers, through which the views seem somehow further away than it really is. The valley is beautifully green, and it is so steep that when you are on the high land on either side, you look right across it, unless you are near enough to see down. The houses of the old town, the side away from us, are all red-roofed, and seem piled up one on the other anyhow, like the pictures we see of Nuremberg. A quaint old German town, just written here with complete innocence. Nuremberg will be remembered forever for something else. Nothing can be done about that. History will remember Nuremberg for one thing and one thing only, and it won't be the picturesque houses with the red roofs. Right over the town is the ruins of Whitby Abbey, which was sacked by the Danes and which is the scene of part of Marmion. And you don't even know what that is. Most readers who pick up Dracula won't even know what that is. It didn't need an explanation when Bram Stoker included it in his book. Where the girl was built up in the wall. It is a most noble ruin of immense size and full of beautiful and romantic Getting off to a rocky start here. What you doing? Huh? Oh, baby. You want to go over there? You can do it. There you go. All right. We should have smooth sailing from now on. It is the most noble ruin of immense size and full of beautiful and romantic bits. There is a legend that a white lady is seen in one of the windows. Between it and the town there is another church, the parish one, round which is a big graveyard full of tombstones. This is to my mind the nicest spot in Whitby, for it lies right over the town and has a full view of the harbor and all up the bay to where the headland, called Kettleness, stretches out into the sea. It descends so steeply over the harbor that part of the bank has fallen away, and some of the graves have been destroyed. In one place, part of the stonework of the graves stretches out over the sandy pathways far below. There are walks and seats beside them through the churchyard, and people go and sit there all day long, looking at the beautiful view and enjoying the breeze. And you know from these descriptions that Bram Stoker did that. I shall come and sit here very often myself and work. Indeed, I am writing now with my book on my knee and listening to the talk of 3 old men who are sitting beside me. They seem to do nothing all day but sit there and talk. The harbor lies below me, with, on the far side, one long granite wall stretching out into the sea, with a curve outwards at the end of it, in the middle of which is a lighthouse. A heavy sea wall runs along outside of it. On the near side, the sea wall makes an elbow crooked inversely, and its end, too, has a lighthouse. Between the 2 piers there is a narrow opening into the harbor, which then suddenly widens. If you think about it for a minute, this description doesn't tell you anything. Just go with this description. If you've never been anywhere near this, if you've never been to this site, or never seen a picture of it, try to imagine it from this description. It doesn't work. This is the kind of description you give if you have been there, not the kind of description where you're trying to make it real in the eye of someone who hasn't been there. It is nice at high tide, but when the tide is out, it shoals away to nothing, and there is merely a stream of the Esk running between banks of sand with rocks here and there. Outside of the harbor, on this side, there rises for about half a mile a great reef, the sharp edge of which runs straight out from behind the south lighthouse. At the end of it is a buoy with a bell, which swings in bad weather and sends in a mournful sound on the wind. They have a legend here that when a ship is lost, bells are heard out at sea. I must ask the old man about this. He's coming this way. He is a funny old man. He must be awfully old, for his face is all gnarled and twisted like the bark of a tree. He tells me that he is nearly 100, and that he was a sailor in the Greenland fishing fleet when Waterloo was fought. He is, I am afraid, a very skeptical person, for when I asked him all about the bells at sea and the White Lady of the Abbey, he said very brusquely, okay, as I read this last time, I feel important that I should warn you that, to paraphrase my beloved Blazing Saddles, what we're about to hear now for page after page is genuine frontier gibberish. I wouldn't flash myself about them, miss. Them things be all wore out. Mind, I don't say that they never was, but I do say that they wasn't in my time. They may all be very well for comers and trippers and the like, but not for a nice young lady like you. Them feet folks from York and Leeds, they be always eating cured herrings and drinking tea and looking out to buy cheap jet would creet aught. I wonder Mazal would have bothered telling him lies to him. Even the newspapers was just full of fool talk. I thought he would be a good person to learn interesting things from. So there's probably a library in Whitby. So I asked him if he would mind telling me something about the whale fishing in old days. He was just settling himself to begin when the clock struck 6, whereupon he labored to get up and said, I must gang ageenward home now, miss. My granddaughter doesn't like to be kept waiting when the tea is ready, for it takes me time to crammel about the grease, for there be many of 'em, and miss I lack belly timber sairly by the clock. I got to be getting home, is what he's saying. He needs to get down the steps, and there's a huge flight of steps. He hobbled away, and I could see him hurrying as well as he could down the steps. The steps are a great feature of the place. They lead from the town up to the church. There are hundreds of them, I do not know how many, and they wind up in a delicate curve. The slope is so gentle that a horse could easily walk up and down them. I think they must originally have had something to do with the abbey. I shall go home, too. Lucy went out visiting with her mother, and as they were only on duty calls, I did not go. They will be home by this. Then the next day, the 25th of July. I came up here an hour ago with Lucy, and we had a most interesting talk with my old friend and the 2 others who always come to join him. He is evidently the Sir Oracle of them, and I should think it must have been in his time a most dictatorial person. He will not admit anything, and down-faces everybody. If he can't out-argue them, he bullies them, and then takes their silence for agreement with his views. Lucy was looking sweetly pretty in her white lawn frock. She's got a beautiful color since she has been here. I noticed that the old men did not lose any time in coming up and sitting near her when we sat down. She is so sweet with old people. I think they fall in love with her on the spot. Even my old man succumbed and did not contradict her, but it gave me double share instead. I got him on the subject of the legends, and he went off at once in a sort of sermon. I must try to remember it and put it all down. Mina, I kind of wish I hadn't worked so hard to remember this. What Bram Stoker was thinking. A little of this goes a long way. Instead, we get a lot of it. It be all fool talk, lock, stock, and barrel. That's what it be, and nowt else. These bands and wafts and bogos and bargos and bogles and all aren't only fit for bands and dizzy women a belderin. They be nowt but our airblebs. They and all grims and signs and warnings, and all be invented by parsons and ill-buke bodies and railway toters to skeek and scunner halflins and get folks to do something that they don't other inclined to do. It makes me ireful to think of them. Why, it's them that, not content with prying in lies and paper and preaching them out in pulpits, does want to be cutting them out on tombsteins. Look here all about you in what airt you will. All them steens holding up their heads as well as they can out of the pride is a cant, simply tumbling down with the weight of the lies on 'em. Here lies the body, or sacred to the memory, wrote all over 'em, and yet nigh half of them ain't no bodies at all. The memories, half of them being care to pinch a snuff about, much less sacred. Lies, all of them, nothing but lies of one kind or another. Magog! It'll be a quare scouterment of the day of judgment when they come tumbling up here in their death stirks, all jooped together and trying to drag their tombsteins with them to prove how good they was. Some of them trembling and dithering with their hands that dozened and slippy and lying in the sea that they can't even keep their group on it. I could see from the old fellow's self-satisfied air the way in which he looked round for approval of his cronies, that he was showing off. But I put a word in to keep him going. Oh, Mr. Swales, you can't be serious. Surely these tombstones are not all wrong. In case you're wondering, that's what he was saying in that paragraph. He was saying these tombstones are all lying. They're all lying. And we're going to see what he means is either A, the tombstone is saying in beloved memory when no one remembers the person and they weren't beloved in their day, or B, the tombstone is saying here lies when there's no body in the grave and never has been. She asks him, surely they're not all wrong, and he answers immortally with the word yablins. Yablins! They may be poorish food for wrong, saving where they make out the people too good, but there be folk that do a bomb bowl be like the sea, if only it be their own. The whole thing only be lies. Now look you here, you come here a stranger and you see a kirk agairth. I nodded, for I thought that it better to assent, although I did not quite understand his dialect. I knew it had something to do with the church. He went on, and you can't say that all those steens be about folk that happened here and snorted all snog. I assented again. Then that be just where the lie come in. Why, there be scores of these lay-a-beds that be tune as dulled as Dunn's Beckerbox on Friday night. He nudged one of his companions, and they all laughed. And magog, how about they be otherwise? Look at that one. The afters abaft the beer bank. Read it. I went over and read. Edward Spangley, Master Mariner, murdered by pirates on the coast of Andres, April 1854, aged 30. When I came back, Mr. Swales went on. Who brought him home, I wonder, to hap him here? Murdered off the coast of Andres, and you can say that his body lay under. Why, I couldn't name ye a dozen whose bones lie in the Greenland seas above. And he points north at Greenland, or where the currents may have drifted them. There be steens about ye. Can ye with your young eyes read the small print of the lies from here? This Braithwaite Lowry, I knew his father, lost in the lively off Greenland in 20. Or Andrew Woodhouse, drowned in the same sea in 1777. Or John Paxton, drowned off Cape Farewell a year later. Or old John Rawlings, whose grandfather sailed with me, drowned in the Gulf of Finland in 50. Do you think that all these men will have to make a rush to woot me when the trumpet sounds? I have me anarthms about it. I tell you, when they got here, you'd be jombling and jostling one another that way. It'd be like to fight up the ice in the old days, when we'd be at one another from daylight to dark and trying to tie up our cuts by the light of the aurora borealis. This was evidently a local pleasantry, for the old man cackled over it, and his cronies joined in with gusto. But, I said, surely you are not quite correct, for you start on the assumption that all the poor people and all their spirits will have to take up their tombstones with them on the Day of Judgment. Do you think that will really be necessary? He's saying they'll have to take their tombstones with them on the Day of Judgment because the tombstones are the only thing saying that they're of blessed memory. That if they don't have that testimony, they won't have anyone speaking for them. What else are tombstones for? Answer me that, miss. Oh, to please their relatives, I suppose. To please their relatives, you suppose? This he said with intense scorn. How will it pleasure their relatives to know that this lies wrote over them, and that everybody in the place knows that they be lies? He pointed to a stone at our feet, which had been laid down as a slab on which the seat was rested, close by the edge of the cliff. Read the lines on that Thurstein, he said. The letters were upside down to me from where I sat, but Lucy was more opposite them, and she leant over and read. Sacred to the memory of George Cannon, who died in the hope of glorious resurrection on July 29th, 1873, falling from the rocks at Kettleness. This tomb is erected by his sorrowing mother to her dearly beloved son. He was the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Really, Mr. Swales, I don't see anything very funny in that. She spoke her comment very gravely and somewhat severely. You don't see aught funny? That's because you don't garn the sorrowing mother was a hellcat that hated him because he was a screwed, irregular laminer he was, and he hated her so that he committed suicide in order that she mightn't get the insurance she put on his life. He blew nigh the top of his head off with an old musket that they had for scaring crows with. 'Twarn't for crows then, for it bought the clegs and the dupes on him. That's the way he fell off the rocks. And as to the hope of glorious resurrection, I've heard often him say myself that he helped him go to hell, for his mother was so pious that she'd sure to go to heaven, and he didn't want to addle where she was. Now isn't that the steen at any rate? He hammered it with his stick as he spoke. A pack of lies? And won't it make Gabriel keckle when Geordie comes panting up the grease with the tombstone balanced on his hump and asks it to be took as evidence? I did not know what to say, but Lucy turned the conversation as she said, rising up, "Oh, why didn't you tell us of this? It is my favorite seat, and I cannot leave it. And now I find I must go, sitting over the grave of a suicide." "That won't harm you, me pretty, and it make poor Geordie Glabson to have so trim a lass sitting on his lap. That won't hurt ye. Why, I've sat here and off of nigh 20 years past, and it hasn't done me no harm. Don't ye fash about them as lies under you, or that doesn't lie there either. It'll be time for you to be getting start when you see the tombstones all run away with, and the place as bare as stubble field. There's the clock. I must be gang. My service to you, ladies." And off he hobbled. He's got to go. He's got to get home for tea. Lucy and I sat a while, and it was all so beautiful before us that we took hands as we sat. And she told me all over again about Arthur and their coming marriage. That made me just a little heartsick, for I haven't heard from Jonathan in a whole month. And then later the same day, I came up here alone, for I'm very sad. There has been no letter from me. I hope there cannot be anything the matter with Jonathan. The clock has just struck 9. I see the lights scattered all over the town, sometimes in rows where the streets are, and sometimes singly. They run up the Esk and die away in the curve of the valley. To my left, the view is cut off by a black line of roof of an old house next to the abbey. The sheep and lambs are bleating in the field away behind me, and there is a clatter of donkeys' hooves up the paved road behind. The band on the pier is playing a harsh waltz in good time, and further along the quay there is a Salvation Army meeting in a back street. Neither of the bands hears the other, but up here I hear and see them both. I wonder where Jonathan is, and if he's thinking of me. I wish he were here. And then we move to Dr. Seward's diary. Dr. Seward is the master of the large insane asylum next to Carfax Abbey, and he was also one of the suitors for Lucy's hand, and she turned him down. And he has an interesting case, Renfield. And this is from the 5th of June in his diary. The case of Renfield grows more interesting the more I get to understand the man. He has certain qualities very largely developed: selfishness, secrecy, and purpose. I wish to get at what is the object of the latter. He seems to have some settled scheme of his own mind, but what it is I do not yet know. His redeeming quality is a love of animals, though indeed he has such curious turns at it that I sometimes imagine he's only abnormally cruel. Again, to quote from my beloved line in Winter, Renfield loves animals the way the glutton loves his lunch. His pets are of odd sorts. Just now his hobby is catching flies. He has at present such a great quantity of them as I might have had to expostulate. To my astonishment, he did not break out into a fury, as I expected, but took the matter in simple seriousness. He thought for a moment, and then said, "May I have 3 days? I shall clear them away." Of course I said that would do. I must watch him. 3 days. From death to life. Then the next date is June the 18th. He has turned his mind now to spiders, and has got several very big fellows in a box. He keeps feeding them his flies, and the number of the latter is becoming sensibly diminished, although he has used half his food in attracting more flies from outside his room. Then we move on to the 1st of July, so 2 more weeks. We're not exactly hurtling along with day-by-day occurrences here. His spiders are now becoming as great a nuisance as his flies, and today I told him that he must get rid of them. He looked very sad at this, so I said that he must clear at least some of them at any rate. He cheerfully acquiesced in this, and I gave him some time, as before, for reduction. He disgusted me much while with him, for when a horrid blowfly, bloated with some carrion feud, buzzed into the room, he caught it, held it exultantly for a few minutes between finger and thumb, and then, before I knew what he was going to do, put it in his mouth and ate it. I scolded him for it, but he argued quietly that it was very good and very wholesome, that it was life, strong life, and gave life to him. This gave me an idea, or the rudiment of one. I must watch how he gets rid of his spiders. He has evidently some deep problem in his mind, for he keeps a little notebook in which he's always jotting down something. Whole pages of it are filled with masses of figures, generally single numbers added up in batches, and when the totals add in batches again, as though he were focusing on some account, as the auditors put it. Then the 8th of July. There is a method in his madness, and the rudimentary idea, in my mind, is growing. It will be a whole idea soon, and then, oh, unconscious celebration. You will have to give the wall to your conscious brother. I kept away from my friend for a few days so that I might notice if there was any change. These remain as they were, except that he has parted with some of his pets and got a new one. He has managed to get a sparrow, and has already partly tamed it. His means of taming is simple, for already the spiders have diminished. Those that do remain, however, are well fed, for he still brings in flies by tempting them with his food. Then the 19th of July. We are progressing. My friend has now a whole colony of sparrows. Good luck to him. Enough to drive someone insane. And his flies and spiders are almost obliterated. When I came in, he ran to me and said he wanted to ask me a great favor, a very, very great favor, and as he spoke, he fawned on me like a dog. I asked him what it was, and he said, with a sort of rapture in his voice and bearing, a kitten. A nice, little, sleek, playful kitten that I can play with and teach and feed and feed. and feed. I was not unprepared for this request, for I had noticed that his pets went on increasing in size and vivacity, but I did not care that his pretty family of tame sparrows should be wiped out in the same manner as the flies and spiders. So I said I would see about it, and asked him if he would not rather have a cat than a kitten. His eagerness betrayed him as he answered, "Oh, yes, I would like a cat. I only asked for a kitten lest you should refuse me a cat. No one would refuse me a kitten, would they?" I shook my head and said that at the present I feared it would not be possible, but that I would see about it. His face fell, and I could see a warning of danger in it, for there was a sudden fierce sidelong look, which meant killing. The man is an undeveloped homicidal maniac. I shall test him with his present craving and see how well it will work out. Then I will know more. Then later that day at 10 p.m., I have visited him again and found him sitting in the corner brooding. When I came in, he threw himself on his knees before me and implored me to let him have a cat. That his salvation depended on it. I was firm, however, and told him that he could not have it, whereupon he went without a word and sat down, gnawing his fingers in the corner where I had found him. I shall see him early in the morning. Then, the 20th of July. Visited Renfield very early, before the attendant went his rounds. Found him up and humming a tune. He was spreading out his sugar, which he had saved, in the window, and was manifestly beginning his fly-catching again, and beginning it cheerfully with a good grace. I looked around for his birds, and not seeing them, asked him where they were. He replied, without turning around, that they had all flown away. There were a few feathers about the room, and on his pillow a drop of blood. I said nothing, but went and told the keeper to report me if there was anything odd about him during the day. He's killed and eaten the sparrows at night. 11 a.m. that same day, the attendants have just been to me to say that Renfield has been very sick and has disgorged a whole lot of feathers. "My belief is, doctor," he said, "that he's eaten his birds, and that he just took and ate them raw." And then at 11 p.m. that day, so a whole day has gone by. This Dr. Seward doesn't sleep much. I gave Renfield a strong opiate tonight, enough to make even him sleep, and took away his pocketbook to look at it. I thought that the thought that has been buzzing about my brain lately is complete, and the theory proved. My homicidal maniac is of a peculiar kind. I shall have to invent a new classification for him and call him a zoophagous maniac, in other words, life-eating. What he desires is to absorb as many lives as he can, and he has laid himself out to achieve it in a cumulative way. He gave many flies for one spider and many spiders for one bird, and then wanted a cat to eat the many birds. What would have been his later steps? It would be almost worthwhile to complete the experiments. It might be done if there were only sufficient cause. Men sneered at vivisection, and look at its results today. Vivisection is not progress. It's barbarism, and it had no good results. Why not advance science in the most difficult and vital aspect, the knowledge of the brain? Had I even the secret of one such mind, did I hold the key to the fancy of even one such lunatic, I might advance my own branch of science to a pitch compared with which Burton Sanderson's physiology or Ferrier's brain knowledge would be as nothing. If only there was a sufficient cause. I must not think too much on this, or I may be tempted. A good cause might turn the scale with me, for may I not too be of an exceptional brain, congenitally? How well the man reasoned. Lunatics always do within their own scope. I wonder at how many lives he values a man, or if at only one. He has closed the account most accurately, and today begins a new record. How many of us begin a new record with each day of our lives? To me, it seems only yesterday that my whole life ended with my new hope. In other words, when Lucy turned him down. And that truly I began a new record. So it would be until the great recorder sums me up and closes my ledger account with a balance of profit or loss. Oh, Lucy, Lucy, I cannot be angry with you, nor can I be angry with my friend whose happiness is yours. But I must only wait on, hopeless, and work. If only I could have a cause as my poor, mad friend there, good, unselfish cause to make me work, that would indeed be happiness. Okay. Then we move back to Mina's journal for the 26th of July. I am anxious, and it soothes me to express myself here. It's like whispering to oneself and listening at the same time. That is actually a very good description of the joy of keeping a personal journal. It's like talking to yourself and listening at the same time. That's actually really well put. It makes me wonder if Bram Stoker kept a private journal. I've read 4 biographies of the man, and I don't know. I don't think it survives if he did. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. And there's also something about the shorthand symbols that makes it different from writing. I am unhappy about Lucy and about Jonathan. I had not heard from Jonathan for some time and was very concerned, but yesterday dear Mr. Hawkins, who is always so kind, sent me a letter from him. Mr. Hawkins is Jonathan Harker's superior at the law firm, and we know that Jonathan Harker wrote him a letter with Dracula's supervision. I had written asking him if he had heard, and he said the enclosed had just been received. It is only a line dated from Castle Dracula, and says that he is just starting for home. That is not like Jonathan. I do not understand it, and it makes me uneasy. Then, too, Lucy, although she is so well, has lately taken to her old habit of walking in her sleep. Her mother has spoken to me about it, and we have decided that I am to lock the door to our room every night. Mrs. Westenra has got an idea that sleepwalkers always go out on some roof of house or along the edge of cliffs, and then get suddenly wakened and fall over with a despairing cry that echoes all over the place. Poor dear, she is naturally anxious about Lucy, and she tells me that her husband, Lucy's father, had the same habit, that he would get up in the night and dress himself and go out, if he were not stopped. I actually knew a sleepwalker once. Pretty eerie thing. Pretty eerie phenomenon. Lucy is to be married in the autumn, and she is already planning out her dresses and how her house is to be arranged. I sympathize with her, for I do the same, only Jonathan and I will start in a life of a very simple mode, and shall have to make ends meet for a while. Mr. Holmwood, he is the Honourable Arthur Holmwood, the only son of Lord Godalming, is coming up here very shortly, as soon as he can leave town, for his father is not very well, and I think dear Lucy is counting the moments till he comes. She wants to take him up to the seat in the churchyard cliff and show him the beauty of Whitby. I dare say it is the waiting which disturbs her. She'll be all right after he arrives. Then the 27th of July. No news from Jonathan. I'm getting quite uneasy about him, though why I should I do not know. But I do wish that he would write, and even if it were only a single line. Lucy walks more than ever, and each night I am awakened by her moving about the room. Fortunately, the weather is so hot that she cannot get cold, but still the anxiety and perpetually be awakened is beginning to tell on me, and I am getting nervous and wakeful myself. Thank God Lucy's health keeps up. Mr. Holmwood has been suddenly called to the Ring to see his father, who has been taken seriously ill. Lucy frets at the postponement of seeing him, but it does not touch her looks. She is a trifle stouter, and her cheeks are a lovely rosy pink. She has lost that anemic look which she had. I pray it will last. Then the 3rd of August, so a week later. Another week gone, and no news from Jonathan, not even Mr. Hawkins, from whom I have heard. Oh, I do hope he's not ill. He surely would have written. I look at that last letter of his, but somehow it does not satisfy me. It does not read like him, and yet it is his writing. There is no mistake of that. Lucy has not walked much in her sleep the last week, but there is an odd concentration about her, which I do not understand. Even in her sleep, she seems to be watching me. She tries the door, and finding it locked, goes about the room searching for a key. That is not typical behavior in sleepwalkers. Problem solving is not typical behavior in sleepwalkers. Then the 6th of August. Another 3 days and no news. This suspense is getting dreadful. If only I knew where to write or where to go to, I should feel easier. A mystery. It's a mystery, Mina. What should you do? How about you write a letter to Mr. Hawkins? How about you write a letter to Castle Dracula? How about you get Mr. Hawkins to send someone on the road to Castle Dracula? But no one has heard a word of Jonathan since the last letter. I must only pray to God for patience. Lucy is more excitable than ever, but is otherwise well. Last night was very threatening, and the fishermen say we are in for a storm. I must try to watch it and learn the weather signs. Today is a very grey day, and the sun, as I write, is hidden in thick clouds, high over the Kettleness. Everything is grey, except the green grass, which seems like emerald among it. Grey earthy rock, grey clouds, tinged with the sunburst of the far edge, hang over the grey sea, into which the sand points stretch like grey fingers. The sea is tumbling in over the shallows, and the sandy flats with a roar, muffled with the sea mist drifting inland. The horizon is lost in grey mist. All is vastness. The clouds are piled up like giant rocks, and there is a brool over the sea that sounds like some presage of doom. Dark figures are on the beach here and there, sometimes half shrouded in the mist, and seem men like trees walking, is the quote from the New Testament, from someone who's just had his eyesight returned, partly. The fishing boats are racing for home, and rise and dip with the ground swell as they sweep up into the harbor, bending to the scuppers. Here comes old Mr. Swales. He's making straight for me, and I can see by the way he lifts his hat that he wants to talk. I have been quite touched by the change in the poor old man. When he sat down beside me, he said in a very gentle way, "I want to say something to ye, miss." I could see he was not at ease, so I took his poor wrinkled hand in mine and asked him to speak fully. So he said, leaving his hand in mine, "I'm afraid, my dearie, that I must have shocked you all by the wicked things I've been saying about the dead and such like for weeks past, and I didn't mean them, and I want you to remember that when I'm gone. We odd folks would be daffled, and with one foot abaft the crook hole, don't altogether like to think of it, and we don't want to feel scared of it, and that's why I've took to making light of it, so that I'd be cheer up my own heart a bit. But Lord love me, miss, I ain't afraid of dying, not a bit, only I don't want to die if I can help it. My time must be near at hand now, for I be old, and 100 years is too much for any man to expect. And I'm so nigh it that old man is already whetting his scythe. You see, I can't get out of the habit of the coffin of it all at once. The chaffs will wag as they used to. Some day soon the angel of death will sound his trumpet for me. But don't you do all and greet, my dearie." For he saw that I was crying. "If you should come to this very night, I'd not refuse to answer his call. For life be, after all, only be waiting for something else that we be doing, and death be all that we can rightly depend on. But I'm content, for it's coming to me, my dearie, and coming quick. It may be coming while we be looking and wondering. Maybe it's in the wind out over the sea that's bringing in with this loss and wreck and sore distress and sad hearts. Look, look," he cried suddenly. "There's something in the wind and in the host beyond that sounds and looks and tastes and smells like death. It's in the air. I feel it coming. Lord, make me answer cheerful when me call comes." He held up his arms devoutly and raised his hat. His mouth moved as though he were praying. After a few minutes' silence, he got up, shook his hands with me, blessed me, and said goodbye, and hobbled off. It all touched me and upset me very much. I was glad when the Coast Guard came along, with his spyglass under his arm. He stopped to talk to me, as he always does, but all the time kept looking out at a strange ship. "I can't make her out," he said. "She's a Russian, by the look of her, but she's knocking about in the queerest way. She doesn't know her mind a bit. She seems to see the storm coming, but can't decide whether to run up north in the open or to put in here. Look, there again, she is steered mighty strangely, for she doesn't mind the hand on the wheel, changes about with every puff of wind. We'll hear more of her before this time tomorrow." That is the end of the chapter that reassures you if you had a moment's doubt about the artistry of Bram Stoker. Because this is a chapter that masterfully plays on the last one. In the last one, there was absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing at all. This is a bunch of people. The worst that troubled that last chapter is the two men had to be refused in their offer of marriage. And they're best friends. So even that was resolved. This chapter takes all of that stuff, moves it to a scenic vacation spot on the coast, and then subtly, very subtly, draws in darkness. It's not just the overhanging worry. Mina is worried. Why have I not heard from Jonathan? Why has it been so long since I've heard from him? It has to be that something's wrong. She doesn't put it that way, but it has to be. If you don't hear that long, something's wrong. But it's not just that. It's so much else. Oh, there's so many subtle things going on here. One of the first few things we hear at the beginning of the chapter about sightings of ghosts, about old ancient mysteries, about a girl bricked up in the wall of the abbey to bless it as a sacrifice. Grim, creepy things. It's true that Mina, and through Mina, Bram Stoker, gives us lots of beautiful passages as well about how lovely Whitby is, but it's mostly dark. You have this 100-year-old man feeling his oats and loving his regular comedy routine about mocking all of these dead people in the graveyard, but something gets to him, because he comes back and says, "I didn't mean to mock it. I'm sorry that I mocked it. I'm sorry that I mocked the supernatural." And says that he feels like death is very close to him. Maybe it's coming on this storm that everyone predicts is coming in, and the storm looks bad. And Lucy is sleepwalking. And she's sleepwalking to escape. She's sleepwalking to get somewhere. She's not just bumping against doors. And we end with that final note where the Coast Guard observer with his telescope is able to see that a certain ship out on the water is acting like no one is at the helm. A very ominous note. It is sailing under some kind of power, but It's not making for any one set destination. It doesn't seem quite to know what to do. So we get a seaside interlude, and our two young heroines are here, and they are enjoying each other's company. But darkness is gathering on this area. And as a counterpoint to all of that, just all of this perfectly done, calibrated in just these little ways, as a counterpoint to that, Renfield is getting worse. This lunatic is trying to escalate his zoophagy. All wonderfully done. It's a rare bit of confidence on a writer's part for you to give us that last chapter. After driving things to a fever pitch of gothic horror, you then stop everything and give us girls prattling about love and marriage. But you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You're giving us an entirely new scene, and you're going to darken it as evil approaches. So we will move on next time, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.